In early 2023, I read The Last Ronin, and the comic itself is actually really good. And because the comic was so good, it made me explore the TMNT franchise. And before reading The Last Ronin, I was barely a casual fan of TMNT in general. But now that I watch most of the movies and the TV shows, I became a genuine fan of the franchise. The movies are good, well, for the most part, and the TV shows are amazing, and I love how each and every single one of them is just different and it's like its own thing, while still borrowing elements from other TMNT shows and the comics. The first animated show I checked out was Rise, and then went down to 2012. However, the show I grew up as a kid back in the early 2000s is of course the 2003 series. As a kid, of course, I never necessarily, watched the show back to back, but as as an adult right now, and like several months ago, I decided to binge the series, and I gotta say, this might be the best iteration of the Turtles ever, as it heavily borrows story elements of the comics, and also just doing its own thing, and it's just really unique when it comes to its own like storylines and animation compared to the other Turtle shows. Out of all the episodes in this series, the one episode that stood out to me is the episode Same as It Never Has. I want to talk about this episode specifically is because how dark it is, and it really reminds me so much of The Last Ronin. And yeah, I'm just gonna break down the episode, why this episode is so dark and why it parallels so much to The Last Ronin. Before I explain what this episode is about, I have to give a little bit more context on how this episode came to be. And so, back in episode 19 of season 3, we see that Draco and the Daimyo-san has merged together and traveled to the Turtles' lair to get the revenge, basically. And basically, they send all the turtles at different time periods and different locations and through space and time. In episode 21, we get to see Donatello where he has been, and the episode starts off as a dystopian future of New York where the Shredder basically runs everything and everything is in shambles. After the confrontation with the ultimate Draco, Donnie finds himself in a lair that is destroyed and his brothers are missing. As Donnie walks out, he is confronted by the Shredder's forces and basically they try to arrest him. However, a mysterious figure comes and saves Donatello's life. As it turns out, the mysterious figure was Michelangelo, who looks really grizzled and has a missing arm. Mikey is of course happy, but then begins to question what happened to Donnie, and he basically, dumps Donnie that he's been missing for 30 years, and basically everyone just began to split apart right after he, started to become missing. As Mikey leads Donnie to see Splinter, Mikey reveals that Leo and Raph has gone their separate ways, and ever since Donnie left, the team was never the same again, and Shredder began to enslave the people of New York. When Mikey and Don finally arrive at their destination, it's revealed that Master Splinter had died years ago and was basically buried at the park with a piece of wood engraved with his name. To avenge their father and to make up for missing time, Donnie plans to take down the Shredder, but he needs Leo and Raphael back. Mikey then takes Donnie to see April again, reuniting them together, and basically he finds out that Casey is gone too. However, it also turns out that Hun and Baxter Stockman have betrayed the Shredder and are now working with the Resistance with April. The scene then transitions to Karai reporting to the Shredder that Donatello has returned, and basically the Shredder orders to, get Donatello's head and, basic villainy stuff, dialogue. We then have a scene of Raphael and Leonardo, meeting up again. However, they brought up the discussion of saving Master Splinter as Leo. He told them to, we did the right thing. We followed Master Splinter orders. However, Raphael says it differently as he wanted to go back and possibly save him. And to the breaking point, they actually almost about to fight until Donnie comes in and basically whacks them both. He's like, guys, we need to come back together and, be part of a team again, in which both of them, welcome back Donnie and like, where have you been? And basically Donnie tells them the plan that we need to take down the Shredder once and for all, and they need them to be, together. The Turtles showed up to the Shredder's lair with a drill and Donnie coming out with the mech suit to have one final battle to this timeline. In the battle, we get to see the Turtles once again fight together as one, fighting the different robots and the Shredder. However, Mikey gets surrounded by the Shredder's robots and actually dies right in front of Donatello's eyes. And then when Donnie fights the Shredder, he gets knocked out, in which Leo and Karai begin to battle one last time. Leo actually gets the upper hand against Karai, however, he gets distracted by a robot behind him. However, because he was turning his back against Karai, Karai stabs in the back and basically killing Leo right there and then, in which Raphael comes in and starts battling Karai as well. You'd think that Raphael will get the upper hand against Karai this time as well, but Karai also kills Raphael too, which is like the most insane part to me of this like episode. And then April comes out of the the drill or whatever and started blasting Karai, and then Karai dies right there and there as well. And it's like crazy to see all of these characters that we have like seen and like built up throughout this like season 3 is, and just to see them die is really shocking. As the last standing turtle, Donnie traps the Shredder with the drill, destroying the suit and the Shredder. However, with the victory, it also costed his brothers' lives. As April consoles with Donnie about winning and defeating the Shredder, Donnie begins to phase away, teleporting him back to the present. And that's basically the end of the episode. We all know that the 2003 series is really serious and darker than compared to the other cartoons that came out even before and after it. And this episode really solidified like the really dark themes of dystopian futures and like losing your loved ones. And it's just really devastating to see the characters that we grew up with just like die one off, one by one. And it's just really devastating, especially if you watch this episode as a kid. I was like, what is happening? And did we really just watch our favorite turtles die and everything like that? And just to see Donnie's reactions to it just makes it even more heartbreaking just to witness that. Even though this is like basically a what if story, it still has a profound effect as to to us the viewer and to Donnie later on in the episodes. If you read the last Ronin comic, this has so many parallels to it, but it's still different to it. As in the beginning of the story, of course, you have all the turtles die, but within this episode we have the turtles all alive together, but they all die one by one, leaving Donatello alive instead of Michelangelo. Spoilers, my bad. Although all the turtles are still alive, we still have them acting like really depressed, sad heroes, and they're basically on their own. They split up, and that's what I would imagine if one of the turtles left and it was just the 3 of them. So it makes perfect sense, especially with Leo's and Raph's relationship, as obviously they would take the what happened like very differently. Of Leo, he just accepts it. However, Raphael feels the opposite, and he just can't let that go, especially when he lost Master Splinter. And so you get to see how bitter and like sad and angry all these characters feel, and that really parallels to how Michelangelo feels towards, like, in the comic, how he felt about like how Raphael went on his own and he basically got everyone killed, and he got himself killed as well. And I really like that parallel of like the turtles on their own, and it's just how sad it is. Obviously, the comic explores more about Michelangelo's trauma and PTSD, and the fact that he still sees the ghosts of his brothers. But this, what we got in the show is sufficient enough and does a really good job too. In some ways, it does some of the things the last Ronin does a little bit better. I'm not gonna lie. Like one example I would say it does a little bit better is how the brothers would die, because like in the comic you get to see the brothers how they would die, and I didn't really feel that impactful rereading the comic, how Raphael just dies to Karai and Leo just dying to a bomb, and Donnie dying to the Shredder and stuff like that, the new Shredder, quote unquote. But it doesn't feel as impactful because Mikey's not really there to witness that. He's just like, he just knows that it happened, and then I guess the only one he kind of witnessed was Leo's death, but that's pretty much it. But in this episode, we get to see Donnie witness all of his brothers dying, and we get to see a forefront and center, in the episode. And obviously it's not as bloody and gory as the comic. I mean, obviously because it's a kid show, but the fact we get to see it and like it happens, it's just kind of crazy to witness. And sorry for stuttering so much, guys. This show didn't need them to die, but they could have just been knocked out by Kurai and the Shredder and stuff like that, but they just die right there in front of Donnie, and then it still happens. And it's just really crazy to like even think about just the way they show death in this show. I mean, sure, we have the cop out of like the Shredder being beheaded and it was just a robot suit, and that was crazy enough, but the fact we get to see our 3 main characters die is crazy. And also I like to point out that even after this episode, Donnie immediately hugs his brother and saying how much he misses them, and like it's just really great character growth for Donnie, because Donnie gets the short end of the stick with character development, with iterations of the cartoons and everything like that. He was just known as the smart guy. But I love how in this show they explore that he's really kind, he's really creative, and he does care about his brothers. And I love gets the more personality in the 2003 show. In my opinion, I think this is the darkest episode in the series. Minus the Baxter Stockman episode where he loses his skin and body. But yeah, if you guys wanted to check out the episode, I would probably link it in the description, as you can like watch the entire series in this episode for free like right now. So go ahead and check it out and let me know what you guys' opinion is, and what's your guys' favorite episode from 2003, and do you consider this episode the dark episode, and was it dark enough, was it too dark when you were a kid? And yeah, anyways, thanks for watching this video, and good to talk about TMNT for once.